The COVID-19 vaccines are here, and they are the best way to end the pandemic. How are the vaccines developed so quickly? How safe are they? And what are their side effects? When can we stop wearing masks and social distancing? Experts Dr. Monica Peek and Dr. Stephen Weber will answer all your vaccine-related questions coming up right now on At the Forefront Live. And we want to remind our viewers that today's program is not designed to take the place of a visit with your physician. Let's start off with having each of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do here at UChicago Medicine. And Dr. Peek, I'm going to start with you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a primary care physician. I am a bioethicist, and I'm also a health disparities researcher. And since we've been in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I have been leaning in a lot to learn about how this pandemic is affecting marginalized groups and how we can best try and stem the tide of the pandemic, particularly for those who are most affected.
And Dr. Weber?
Sure, thanks, Tim. I'm Stephen Weber. I'm an infectious disease doc and epidemiologist. I'm also the chief medical officer for the University of Chicago Medicine, and in that role, I've helped lead some of the efforts around COVID and then the allocation program, working closely with Dr. Peek and others.
Perfect. We want to remind our viewers that we will take your questions live on the air, so just type them in the comment section and we'll get to as many as possible over the next half hour. We're going to start off with our two most common questions. We've already received quite a few from viewers on Facebook in advance. And Dr. Weber, let's start with you on this one. The first question that we get from everybody is it safe to get vaccinated?
You know, in some ways, Tim, I think the best way I can answer the question is to say, I see patients and I was eager to be vaccinated and I've been vaccinated. So it's just a starting point to say that I value my own safety. I value that of my family. And in electing to get vaccinated when I was offered the chance, that's my shortest answer to it. The longer answer, I know the one that some of our viewers will want to know, is how could this be with a vaccine that seems so new to us? And I'd like to remind people that this mRNA technology behind the vaccine has been around for a while. We were grateful to see that as it was developed for the last year in labs really around the world, we're seeing not only good effect against this particular virus, but also a really good safety record in tens of thousands of folks who took part in clinical trials, including really diverse groups. And the last thing I always come back to that question is, you might have a question about vaccine safety, and we're glad to try to answer. What we do know is that COVID-19 is really unsafe for humans and for our community, and so that's the alternative, and that's what we really want to encourage people to think about.
So Dr. Peek, probably our second most common question is, when can the general public start to get vaccinated? And I know here in the building, we're actually already seeing a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm. And so we are still technically in 1A, where we're prioritizing healthcare workers and people who are in long-term care facilities. But what the city has given us the go-ahead to do is for those bits of vaccine that we have not been able to use to give those to high-risk patients so that we're not wasting vaccine. And so here at our institution, we've started to just give a few of the vaccines out so that we're not wasting them. And then we'll begin rolling them out to the general public pretty shortly. And so our goal is to make sure that we have our front-facing workers. Oh, that's me. Vaccinated as soon as possible, and then that's Stephen, and then we'll begin vaccinating our patients. We could not be more excited about the fact that we've been able to vaccinate some of our patients this past week, and we're looking forward to really ramping that up. We just came from a meeting, Dr. Weber and I, and it is our deepest hope, our most gratifying wish, to be able to begin protecting the patients in our community and the patients that we serve every day.
You know, one of the reasons why we're showing the video is it's important for people to see that we're getting vaccinated as well. It's
Absolutely.
We're not just preaching this than not doing it. We're getting vaccinated as well, and that showed both of you getting vaccinated. So we do have a soundbite too that I want to play. This is from Dr. Kate Mullane, who's also on staff here at UChicago Medicine, and she's going to explain how the vaccines work and why it's safe.
Correct. When you get the vaccine, you do not get any active viral particles. There's many different kinds of vaccines that are out there. There are some, like the Johnson & Johnson one, that we'll have data on pretty soon, which is an adenovirus that has the spike protein attached and induces immunity. With the messenger RNA virus vaccines, there is no active viral particle at all. It's just a small piece of RNA, just the small code for the spike protein. It's really important to know that there is no tracking device that's involved in the production of the vaccine. There is no way that the RNA can go back into the nucleus of the cell and hook on to our DNA. As soon as that RNA is read, there are enzymes called RNA polymerases that break it up, and so as soon as the recipe is read, it's gone. It doesn't cause infertility. It doesn't cause sterility. None of those things can happen with the vaccine.
It's very interesting to actually hear about the science behind the vaccine and why it is safe, and Dr. Mullane did a great job explaining. I do want to point one thing out before we go any further in the show. I just noticed a moment ago that we are live also on the air or on Facebook with our friends at WGN, so we appreciate that and want to say hello to all the viewers there, and again, we'll take as many questions as we possibly can. Dr. Peak, we do have some serious challenges with healthcare disparities in communities of color, and COVID, of course, is just making this even worse. Why do you think it is that many people of color are mistrustful of the COVID vaccine, and what are we doing to try to get the word out that this is a positive thing?
Yeah, there has been, there's so many reasons why persons of color are particularly mistrustful of this vaccine. I think many people have questions about the newness, the technology, how it, came to be within, less than a year. The pandemic itself is frightening, and so there's just a lot of concern. And then we layer onto that the historical and contemporary injustices within marginalized communities, such as the African American community, which has suffered disproportionately in 2020, particularly under this the administration of Donald Trump. And so when we have the same administration in play, where a vaccine has been developed, there's just additional concern. But what is important to know is that this is an international collaboration that happened where multiple companies around the globe were pushing forward to get vaccines developed. And it is a collaboration between scientists, and that the technology, the mRNA technology was developed in the 1980s, and that this is something that has been proven safe. And so I spend a lot of time sort of unpacking all of the reasons why people are concerned and why it's okay to feel that way, but why we have to sort of get past that concern. But the most important thing to know is that our real danger is the virus. It is not the vaccine. It's the virus that is killing, that's causing a 9/11 every day. And that 9/11 is disproportionately impacting Black and brown people, specifically those that are concentrated in neighborhoods that are primarily Black and brown. And Chicago is a very racially segregated city, so it's wiping out huge communities. We are not like many cities that are very diverse, and so where the impact can be shared within the community. And so Chicago, in particular, is having is taking a sort of a big blow to the face within Black and brown communities. And so we have to, as a community, decide that we aren't going to take it anymore. That we're going to get behind the science and stand up this vaccine. and make sure that we are all as protected as we can be, that we're all going to be vaccine advocates and champions, and make sure that everyone that we know and love, those that we hold dear, are ones that we are prioritizing to get vaccinated against the coronavirus.
You know, Dr. Peak, it's interesting, and one of the things that you see COVID being particularly cruel to Black and brown communities, and one of the ways this was explained to me by one of our Latinx co-workers was a lot of frontline workers and a lot of people who really have to go in on a daily basis are from Black and brown communities. Mm-hmm. And so they're forced to make a horrible choice. Mm-hmm. You know, do I go to work and support my family, or do I stay home and we don't have money for food and rent and medicine and things like that? Which is a terrible decision, obviously, have to make. And so this is just it just compounds the challenge of what we're seeing with COVID. And then again, that's why it's so critical. And my hat's off to you, obviously, for your work in educating communities to try to really get folks to get vaccinated. We do have another soundbite that I want to play, and this is from some of our coworkers here at UChicago Medicine. And again, if you're worried about getting this vaccine, listen to this, because they're going to talk about the experience of getting the vaccine and kind of what they went through. Let's roll that one, John.
It was great. The clinic staff is amazing. And, you know, after I had my first dose, it was exactly 21 days ago, I really didn't have any side effects. A sore arm, maybe a little bit fatigued, but I'm really excited to be able to complete the series and so grateful for the staff that's working over here.
I would tell them that there's nothing to fear, nothing to be afraid of. My first vaccine was seamless, painless, had a little sore arm afterwards the next day, but it went away after 24 hours. Nothing to be concerned about, and just to think of the positives over the negatives. The positive of how many lives we're able to save by getting this vaccine, and versus the fear of the things that we see on social media and on the news. And it's not as fearful, but we have a chance to save so many people's lives, including our own and our families.
You know, I think so much about all of our healthcare teams that have been part of this pandemic and how many people it's really affected. And so it's less about doing it for me and more about doing it for those that don't have the opportunity to get the vaccine and those that we're really keeping safe and preventing from getting COVID.
So Emily and Q are both a couple of rock stars that work here at UChicago Medicine, among the greater constellation of a lot of rock stars. You guys are obviously included in that category as well. And we thank them for doing that, because again, I think we just need to show that it's not the thing to be scared of that a lot of people think it is. Dr. Weber, we're getting a lot of questions about how to register for the vaccine, and I know we're a little early on that, but people are asking, and if you can give us some guidance here, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, Dr. Peak mentioned earlier that a number of health systems have been given that latitude, that where we have some extra doses that were originally allocated for healthcare workers to turn to our patients. So what we've done on our campus is we've actually identified folks who've had contact with the health system over the past year, and we're actually reaching out to them. We're actually starting off, for some of the reasons that Monica mentioned, we're actually starting off with the neighborhoods right around the medical center, recognizing that community, both historically and too often contemporarily, is missing out on some access to care. And so we have made our first outreach, and people are hearing about it through either our medical record system, telephone calls, and also texting, because we realize you got to meet people where they're at, both in terms of emotion and culture of this, but also technologically too. As we go forward, we'll keep broadening that within our system. I think similar things are happening as some of the other health systems. Where it will really change and where folks will look for the opportunity to enroll or sign up is going to be as the whole city moves into this 1B. 1B being now for individuals over the age of 65, and then some selected frontline essential workers. And what we understand from the Department of Public Health is they want to have some more centralized registration opportunities, but there is a matter of just paying attention and keeping an eye out through your primary care doc, through your local hospital. In some ways, Tim, we're working this through right now collectively as a society. We see those differences state to state, but what I will tell people is this: if you have an opportunity by way of that primary doctor, or maybe the hospital you visited a while ago, or perhaps there's a vaccination center being set up by the city in your neighborhood, we want you to take advantage of that when your time comes. We know that there are some bad actors out there who are starting to run scams and things like that around vaccine. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more to track in terms of that. But for right now, for those providers that you know, those systems that you already trust, look for them to be reaching out to you and also to reach out to them. I suspect as we go forward, this will become much, much more clear. So the questions are understandable, but we're still much closer to the beginning than to the end on all of this. And we're getting our practice in for sure.
Sounds good. We're getting some more specific questions now from our viewers. Dr. Peak, I'll throw this one to you. My 91-year-old father-in-law will be moving to an assisted living facility soon. Should we wait until after he's vaccinated or go ahead and, should we wait until after he is vaccinated to move him?
So I guess it depends on when he was being planned. Like, are the moving trucks there now? Or is this something that's still in their mind? And so long-term care facilities are vaccinating right now. And so if he moves, he could get vaccinated as soon as he gets there. And so I wouldn't necessarily hold up some, plans that are already in place right now. On the other hand, if this is something that is, still being thought about, several months away, then we anticipate fairly soon the father-in-law should be able to get vaccinated. And then, you could, so either way, this person will get vaccinated in the near future. And so I would think more specifically to the timeline of the moving process, because I know how hard it is to sell something and to, in Chicago, all of those logistics. This person is going to get vaccinated fairly soon.
That's a really good point. If they are moving quickly, they should probably just contact the care facility and they'll tell them if they move in X amount of days, they'll be able to get him vaccinated, which would be kind of an added bonus to actually moving. So Dr. Weber, this one's also from a viewer. Can you discuss the different vaccines? We've heard about Johnson & Johnson coming up soon. What are the pros and cons, and should people wait for that one?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, another space where there's so much information that it's hard to sort through. So we'll do our best to try to provide a little more context for it. The two vaccines that are available right now in the U.S. are the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine. Both of those vaccines require 2 injections. For the Pfizer, it's after 3 weeks, and Moderna after 4 weeks. There's been conversations in the news about, gosh, maybe we should just give 1 dose of that and hold the other. The bottom line is right now, what we know and what we've studied, what we understand, is giving 2 doses each of those vaccines. Seemingly the next vaccine that'll come available in the U.S., we hope, is going to be the Janssen vaccine, which is a 1-dose vaccine. It was mentioned by Dr. Mullane earlier in her example. That vaccine is still yet to get what's called the emergency use authorization from the FDA. We believe that the company is going to submit that information fairly soon, so we may have an answer about that in the next several weeks. The only hesitation that's changed on that vaccine now is that there's been some production delays. No problem with the vaccine itself, but just in building up the number of doses they need. So there might be a little bit of a delay. I'll go back to what I said earlier, and even thinking about what Dr. Peak just said about the instance that was just mentioned. If there's a vaccine available, I would take that vaccine. And I'm not trying to be glib or make a joke about it, but a vaccine that's available to you and that can be administered is going to be preferable to being unvaccinated or waiting for a date, for example, for the Janssen vaccine to come through. The two-dose vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, both have similar effectiveness in their clinical trials of more than 90%, which is outstanding. We'll wait to see for Janssen. We hope it's a similar number. Maybe some tough decisions if it underperforms a little bit. We just don't know yet. But again, I still stick to my advice, which I've given to my patients, to my family across the country, which is if you have that opportunity for vaccine, I'd get that vaccine now, either of those that are available right now.
Excellent. So Dr. Peak, we know it's very important to get the vaccine. What strategies have you found to be effective, when you're talking to your patients that maybe people could use on family or friends who are hesitant to take this vaccine?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to someone, one of our employees in the hallway a couple of hours ago. So every time I see someone on campus, I'm always like, did you get the vaccine? Just to listen with an open heart and an open mind, to understand what their concerns are, because they're coming from a place of rational thought. It may not be their fears may not be founded in science, but they're logical concerns, and they're also usually rooted in a fear. And so we have to not just feed people's minds with the facts, but we have to walk them through and past their fears. We have to hold their hands through this emotional journey. So no matter how much understanding people have, they have to get past their emotional barriers. And so you have to, almost like a therapy session, hear them out, and let them unpack all of that pain that is there, that is keeping them from having that vaccine. And then talk to them about what we know to be true, what we know to be the reasons for why the vaccine is a good thing for this person and for our community. And then try to see if there's anything else that's outstanding. But it's really just a conversation that it's an iterative conversation. And we may end that conversation with just moving a little bit forward, with just a promise that we'll think about it. I may not get to yes, but I can get to maybe, and that may be good enough. And then the next time we'll pick it up. And this is not my patient, but it's an employee that I see all the time. And I said, next time I see you, we'll just continue to check in. And so it's for most people who are vaccine hesitant, there's something emotional that's keeping them from getting the vaccine. And so I think that for me, I found is that getting myself into an emotional space with them has been more effective than coming with a stack of flyers and passing those out.
Well, that makes sense. I think people want to be heard, particularly if they do have concerns about something like this, and I think that makes sense. Let's get to some more of our viewer questions. We've got a lot. Dr. Weber, if you had COVID-19 but were asymptomatic, should you get the vaccine? That's a great question.
It's a great question, and it's one that, again, and I feel like I'm answering a lot of the questions that we're still sorting through and understanding, but our recommendation right now from the CDC and from the experts who helped develop the vaccine is that if you had COVID, whether it was symptomatic or not, in the last 90 days, you should hold off on being vaccinated until after that 90 days expires. I'll be honest with you. That may change as we go forward. And one of the problems with the pandemic is when we have these so-called experts, sitting and saying something 100% and then realizing as we learn more that we might need to take a different view. So this is one of those places. Right now, for my patients and our team members who happen to have had COVID, whether or not they had symptoms, we're telling them hold off to be vaccinated till after that period. And Tim, that's for two reasons. One is, or at least two reasons. One is that there is probably some protection from having had COVID. And whether we measure antibodies or not, which can sometimes help us track immunity, that there's a protection for a period of time where the vaccine may not be as essential to prioritize you for. The other piece we know is that folks who are close to their more recent infection can sometimes have more side effects with the administration of the vaccine. So this 90-day notice right now is a good starting point. We're going to keep tracking the science and the experience, and it may change. And if it changes, it's not going to be because we were totally wrong now or making guesses. It's just that we get more information back and more understanding. And I think when science really works to support our patients and community, we maintain it as a conversation and a dialogue instead of putting a stake in the ground in January that we may need to take back in February or March.
Very well put. Dr. Peak, another viewer question. Can I get vaccinated if I had a transplant?
Yes. This is maybe one of the two things that I think is most important that people understand, that when the more sick people are, the more they need to be vaccinated. One of the things you heard in the video is that this is not a live vaccine. So it is impossible for you to get COVID from this vaccine. And so that all the vaccine can do is protect you from getting the coronavirus. And so I've had a number of people who say, I have diabetes, I have asthma, I have a number of conditions. Is it safe for me to get the vaccine? And I say, if you have those conditions, get to the front of the line. Like, you're more at risk for having poor outcomes from COVID if you have chronic conditions. Those are the people that we are prioritizing for having the vaccine, not people who are having contraindications for getting the vaccine. So that's a huge thing that I want to underscore. If you have medical conditions, you're at increased priority in the vaccine list. The other thing is around allergies. And because there's a few rare cases of sort of a severe reaction, people are thinking if they have hay fever or, they're allergic to, pollen, then they should not be getting the vaccine. And that is not the case at all. Almost everybody has some sort of form of hay fever. I do. And that means that so many people would not be eligible for the vaccine. And so what I'm saying is, unless you're carrying an EpiPen, you do not need to be worried about this vaccine. We're talking about people who have severe anaphylactic reactions to something. And even amongst those people, it's really those who have potential reactions to some of the substances that are in the sort of solutions that the vaccine are made in. And that is very, very uncommon. What we're doing is making sure that we are monitoring people for 30 minutes after they get the vaccine. I'll ask Dr. Weber, but I don't think we've had any occurrences. But if you have chronic allergies and are taking Claritin, no contraindication at all to getting this vaccine. Just pretend that it's completely unrelated to you, because it is. So those are the two things I want to make sure that I have, from an internist point of view, make sure that I've underscored before we end today.
So kind of a follow-up question to that, Monica, is another viewer is asking about allergies to penicillin. Does that have any kind of impact on this? Perfect. All right. So, Stephen, this one's for you, and this is another viewer question. What are your recommendations for pregnant women, lactating women, and women considering pregnancy? That's a question we have heard a lot.
Yeah, this is a really important question, and one for which, and you keep tossing me these questions, Tim, and I'll give you. But we have to answer where there's any uncertainty. We want to answer with candor, as I said a moment ago. As the vaccine came available, there were a lot of questions around this, and what we saw right away was an acknowledgement from the folks who developed the vaccine that the vaccines were not tested in enormous numbers of pregnant women. In fact, in some of the studies, pregnant women were excluded, but they were able to study safety because a number of the participants in the trial became pregnant during the trial. What we saw right away was that some of the real trusted authoritative bodies for obstetrical care, including the College of Gynecology, of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Maternal Fetal Medicine Society, came out right away and they said, we recommend patients, and in their case providers, to recommend to patients that they be vaccinated, because they felt there was enough information to say that because the consequences of COVID can be so severe for pregnant women, that they wanted to make sure that they were protected, and that the vaccine, with the information available, was a better choice. We've actually we've done a town hall for pregnant women among our employees, or women thinking of being pregnant, or those who are breastfeeding, from the similar decisions come to mind. And right now we've seen folks just making some decisions, talking to their obstetrician, talking to their families to make the right decision for them. But on balance, the expert opinion is to say that the vaccine can be safe for pregnant women, those who are thinking becoming pregnant, or those who are breastfeeding. And I think right now we'll continue to track it, but it's been my advice to my patients who happen to be pregnant to go ahead and be vaccinated, because the consequences of COVID can be so severe.
Now, we're just about out of time, but there's a couple of questions I want to get to before we get out. So I'll quickly ask these two. Dr. Peek, let's start with you. Do we know how long the vaccine will last? This is a viewer question. Will this be a yearly thing?
We don't know for sure right now what the durability of the vaccine is. And we've already seen mutations of the virus, some which are making it more infective. But what we know is that this is what viruses do. This is the reason that we have to get a flu shot every season. It's not because the flu vaccine has worn off. It's because the flu virus itself mutates every year. And so we have to get vaccinated against the new strain of flu. It's not that we're no longer it's not that the vaccine has worn off against last year's flu. We're still protected against last year's flu. We have to get protected against this year's flu. And so it may be that, and one of the things we do know is that the rate of mutation for the coronavirus is actually much, much slower than it is for many of the other viruses that we know about, at least so far. And so we don't know how this is going to play out, if we're going to need to have annual vaccines for the coronavirus or not. So it's still too early to tell, but viruses mutate as part of just who they are. And so I think we're fortunate that the rate of change has been slower than it could have been. And the data that we have about duration, I think, is, Dr. Weber, help me out. I think it's more promising than we thought it was going to be, but we don't have definitive data.
I think the early returns are somewhat favorable, to borrow from the other news these days, but I think we will need to wait and see again. And it's another place where we want to be very candid and honest. We want to listen to all the questions. We want to give the best answer we can now, but we're going to need to keep having these conversations as we go forward.
So we are a little bit over time, but Dr. Weber, I'm going to give you the last question because I just think this is an important one. And this actually is something that you and I talked about a little bit the other day. First of all, if I'm vaccinated, can I still get my loved ones sick? And when can we stop wearing masks?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, and one that, again, we're going to learn a lot more about. What we know right now is the vaccines were designed to prevent us from getting sick, an individual from getting sick when we're exposed to the virus. What we don't yet know is the impact of the vaccine on our ability to acquire the virus, maybe transmit the virus to our loved ones at home, or for those of us working in healthcare or elsewhere. So right now, the recommendations are still going to be that we have to be as strict as we have been, in some cases more strict, to help prevent transmission, even after we've been vaccinated. And that may not make sense to everybody right away, but understand about what we face with this pandemic. And if we find that we've been a little extra cautious, I'm willing to apologize for that later. But for right now, what we need to do is maintain our guard, maintain our vigilance, because biologically we can't say for sure that someone who's been vaccinated is unable to transmit the virus to someone who's in close and unprotected contact with them.
We are out of time. You were both fantastic and shared a lot of great information with our audience, so thank you very much for doing this. I know you're both busy. Thank you to our viewers for your fantastic questions, and please remember to check out our Facebook page for our schedule of programs that are coming up in the future. To make an appointment with our post-COVID recovery clinic, give us a call at 773-702-7826. To learn more about UCM's COVID-19 vaccination program, you can visit our website, UChicagoMedicine.org/COVID vaccine. Thanks again for being with us today, and I hope you all have a great week.